5 Proven Patterns for Power Platform Legacy Banking Integration. So, integrating Power Platform with legacy banking core systems. It's something a lot of people ask about, and today we're going to walk through it step by step. Now, let's talk about why integrating Power Platform with legacy banking core systems is harder than it looks. Most legacy core banking platforms were built in the 1980s and 1990s. They run on IBM mainframes, AS/400 systems, or on-premises Oracle databases, designed for batch processing rather than real-time API calls. Power Platform, by contrast, expects REST APIs, OAuth 2.0, and JSON payloads. The mismatch creates specific friction points. None of these problems are unsolvable. They each point to a specific integration pattern, and choosing the wrong one for your situation is where most projects go sideways. Let's talk about next up. Pattern 1. Use Azure API Management as your integration gateway. Azure API Management is the most reliable starting point for integrating Power Platform with legacy banking core systems when the legacy platform already exposes some kind of API surface, even if that surface is SOAP or a proprietary REST format. Here is how this works in practice. Your Power Platform developers never need to touch SOAP. They work with clean JSON APIs, and the transformation logic lives in APIM policies. You can also version the API layer independently of the core banking system, which matters when vendors push core upgrades that change their output format. Let's talk about next up. Pattern 2. Build custom connectors in Power Platform for proprietary bank APIs. When your core banking vendor provides a proprietary SDK or REST API with non-standard authentication, a Power Platform custom connector is the right tool. A custom connector is a wrapper you build inside Power Platform that describes an external API using an open API specification. Once published to your environment, it appears inside Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI exactly like a first-party connector. For legacy banking integrations, custom connectors solve a specific problem: vendor APIs that require API keys, HMAC signatures, mutual TLS, or IP whitelisting that Microsoft's standard connectors cannot handle. The connector definition manages authentication once, and individual flows just call named actions without touching auth logic themselves. Now, moving on to Pattern 3, use Azure Logic Apps to bridge Power Platform and legacy banking systems. Azure Logic Apps sits between Power Platform and the legacy core when you need orchestration logic that's too complex or too sensitive to live inside a Power Automate flow. The key distinction: Power Automate runs in Microsoft's multi-tenant cloud. Azure Logic Apps standard tier runs in a single-tenant environment inside your Azure Virtual Network, with direct access to on-premises systems through the on-premises data gateway or Azure hybrid connections. This matters for banks with strict data residency requirements or systems that simply cannot be exposed to the public internet. Now, moving on to Pattern 4, use Power Automate RPA when there is no API to call. This is the pattern nobody wants to use but sometimes is the only option. Some legacy core banking systems, particularly older in-house COBOL platforms or Metavant era systems, have no API surface at all. The only interface is a green screen terminal or a Windows desktop application. Power Automate Desktop's RPA capabilities can automate these interfaces directly. The bot logs into the terminal, navigates screens, reads field values, and submits data the same way a human operator would. Microsoft's Power Automate Desktop documentation covers the full range of UI automation capabilities, including Windows application automation and browser-based legacy interfaces. The honest trade-offs with RPA. Next up, let's talk about Pattern 5, sync legacy banking data into Dataverse for Power Platform workflows. The fifth pattern shifts the architecture entirely. Instead of calling the legacy core in real time for every Power Platform action, you synchronize relevant data into Microsoft Dataverse on a schedule and let Power Platform work against local Dataverse records. This is the right approach when your legacy core can export data through batch files, change data capture feeds, or ETL jobs, and when your workflows don't require data that's current to the minute. The sync architecture. Let's talk about moving on to what Power Platform banking integration costs and what you get back. Published content on this topic almost never includes actual numbers. Here is what a mid-size bank integrating Power Platform with an existing core banking system can realistically expect. These ranges assume a qualified Azure and Power Platform partner doing the implementation. Internal builds with existing staff typically cost less upfront but take 2-3x longer to reach production. On the ROI side, the numbers that move bank leadership are KYC and AML automation savings. A manual KYC review at a mid-market bank typically costs $35 to $80 per customer when you account for analyst time, document handling, and rework cycles. Automating the data gathering and pre-screening steps with Power Automate flows connected to the legacy core cuts that cost to $8 to $15 per customer. At 500 new customers per month, that's $10,000 to $32,500 in monthly savings from KYC automation alone. Now, automating KYC and AML compliance workflows across legacy systems. Compliance automation is where Power Platform integration with legacy banking systems delivers the clearest, most measurable return. It's also where the audit trail requirements make the architecture decisions non-negotiable. The typical compliance workflow at a community bank or credit union still involves an analyst pulling data from the core system by hand, copying it into Excel, checking it against a sanctions list in a separate vendor tool, and logging findings in a third system. Each handoff is a failure point and an audit gap. With the right integration pattern, the same workflow runs like this. Now, next up, conclusion. Integrating Power Platform with legacy banking core systems is not a one-size-fits-all project. The right pattern depends on whether your core exposes any API surface, how real-time your data requirements are, your network and compliance constraints, and your implementation budget. The 5 patterns here address most scenarios a mid-market bank or credit union will face. Most production architectures combine 2 or 3, APIM for real-time account lookups, Dataverse Sync for reporting and dashboards, and logic apps for orchestration that must stay inside the network perimeter. The KYC and AML savings alone, often $10,000 to $32,500 per month at a 500 customer onboarding rate, justify the integration investment within the first year for most institutions. If you're scoping a Power Platform banking integration project and want help matching the right pattern to your core system, reach out to our team for a technical assessment.